other thing?
Please.
There was still a little bit more to unpack with what the whirlwind, and I don't want to
Good.
bury it, but it was really the essence. I guess the first part that I shared with you, the two houses and moving into that stuff that you've already been talking about, was probably just more of spirit wanting to connect you at that, for me to connect to you that it's right in step with what you're sharing. So
I'm
maybe
grateful for that. That's big.
coming together. So what I was actually seeing in sharing this was really about the upper room experience in what we would call the Last Supper. Because what was being unpacked to me, the first thing that I heard was, and of course you'll get this, but in people, if they listen to us, if we share this, it's like the house of bread. Okay, Bethlehem. Okay, I get that. No. We're going to go deeper here.
Okay.
Bayit lechem, a permutation for lechem would be salt. And there's a reason why I'm bringing these things up, because I heard bayit lechem first, and then I saw the permutation for salt. I'm like, okay, so we got bread and salt. Okay, that makes sense. And then the Spirit showed again Shemini Etzeret, because what I was beginning to see, and I'm going to take this to a point, and whatever this does for you, and how, if it helps with your seders this year or not, I'll let Spirit unpack it for you. But in seeing Shemini Etzeret, I saw a couple things first with the word Shemini, because even though it's the 8th day, so I saw the 3rd day, that we're moving into the 3rd day, and I just shared all of that, moving from the dry day into the exact opposite of that, so that we're not into that dry anymore. We're into the fullness of everything that would be producing life and living water. But the 8th day, in beginning something new, it's not that new cycle of the Torah reading all over again, where it's just dry, crusty, same old. Shemini, when I saw it, I saw two words that were actually unified in this word 8. I saw shaman, I saw oil, and then I saw the wine. I saw the double yods and the noon in there. And I went, how interesting, oil and wine. And then Etzeret, we were talking about Etzar as the helpmate, the Ezer. All of this culminating in this upper room in quote unquote the Last Supper. And the reason why is because that is like the fullness of, first and foremost, the Melchizedek offering. So let's go back into the narrative. You know, I'm not too fond of narratives, but what did Abraham bring the king of Siloam, known as Melchizedek? What was
bread and wine? And just to say this real quick, that is a huge thing that we have been teaching, is the call to the Melchizedek priesthood, away from the not away, but the Levitical priesthood of Aharon is completed. It's done. And the new order in the earth is a Melchizedek priesthood. And we even in Israel go to Melchizedek's altar, because the guy that we work with is the guy that uncovered it.
Okay.
Anyway, I won't say more there, but it's a big deal to us. This Melchizedek is big.
I'm gonna take us one step a little bit further than, but what I was seeing was there's this presentation of a change of priesthood that was happening, and it was the presentation of multiple covenants coming together and being fulfilled in one last moment. So the salt covenant would have been represented there, because how interesting that our housewarming gifts today are a gift of salt, bread, and wine. That is a Melchizedek peace offering.
Salt, bread, and wine.
Salt, bread, wine. So the salt covenant, we have the house of bread, Lechem, the house of salt, Malach. So we have bread, we have salt. So the salt friendship covenant is there. We have wine, which could be considered blood covenant there. right?
Yep.
We have the bread. So I'm looking at this as a communion thing completely different through the eyes of the fulfillment of all the covenants that would be coming together in a priesthood called Melchizedek.
Oh my
This-
goodness. Wait. Okay, wait. I reserve the right to.
I love that. That was so funny. Yes, time out. I'll stop. I'll stop.
As much as I'm not religious, I have a little religion in me. It's that Selah thing. You know,
No, I
we
get it. I
daven.
love Selah.
I daven. It's in my DNA, and you know, you could live your life wanting to hear words like that because Carrie, sorry, I'm talking at you for a moment.
I'm listening. I'm
Um, thousands of years, people would have given everything they had to hear what you just said. Like for thousands of years, they would have given everything to be there when Yeshua said, "Today, in your hearing, the scripture is fulfilled," because what you just said has a similar resonance.
Wow.
That you just said that the fulfillment of these covenants,
Yes.
can I just get that? The fulfillment of these covenants is the message of what we have called historically the Last Supper. Am I hearing you say that?
Yes, and also for those of us that went into Christendom, what they would call when we take communion.
And what does that have to do? It's the fulfillment of the Melchizedek call to order or call to priesthood.
He was initiating them into the Melchizedek priesthood. But there's actually there's one step higher. There's one more hurdle
I'm
for us.
sure, but this is
So I'm sharing this with you because this is what I felt like Spirit was saying for this year. Okay, like I said, this was a whirlwind, and it was like 2 hours of, oh my gosh, I'm drinking off a fire hose. How am I going to even be able to express this to you, Dr. Yana? I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? So the salt covenant was present because of the bread, the breaking of the bread. So I'm even looking at like the breaking of the bread as in the covenant of the pieces, right? The covenant of the pieces. They broke bread with one another into pieces. So if we go back to even the call on Abraham when he was placed in the Tardime and that fiery torch went through and this was going to be a covenant, an everlasting covenant,
between
we
the two
see,
people.
yes, and how there was the division, the division was happening, but there was a fire, a seraphic message, a torch that was going to be going through the light, the Nura, that would be bringing it back together again out of its state of separation. So what did we have with the Aaronic priesthood with the Levitical tribesmen assisting Aaron? Was all about separation, clean and unclean, like all division, separation. Melchizedek is coming to reunite all of the divisions into teaching the comparisons. This is what we were sharing with on that first conversation that you guys we had about the season of comparisons, the this and the that, the clean and the unclean, and everything that we've had to learn of what it's like when we're being roused awake to the system of duality, of what it's like living in the bet, as the bet, as divided. Melchizedek comes in, brings in the salt. breaks the bread. And we're talking about with the wine of the covenant, it's the blood covenant. This is all like the marriage culmination of the two shall become one. This is what I'm trying to convey, is that there was a wedding ceremony, an invitation for them to enter into Melchizedek, but they had to grasp this mystery that was being presented, that I think at the time, the way we're looking at it historically, none of them even got. None of that. They so did not get what he was laying down. They had no idea that he was initiating them into something that they should have known, because these covenants were being presented there in the moment. So in the moment, they entered into the house of bread, Bethlehem. But it was also in the house of salt, of friendship. When I was looking at the 8th day in the new beginning, of course, we're talking about this, the fullness after Sukkot. But yet, when we go and we enter into this marriage contract, the ketubah, there is an anticipation of the fulfillment of these things that are going to happen. Not someday they will. No, it's happening. We just got to show up and let it unfold itself, but it will be finished because the act has already been put into motion. So there was wine present, right? So in the marriage contract, suitor comes to the house. Are you going to accept my proposal? I'm going to give you that glass of wine if you agree to listen to my proposal. Okay, thank you. I'm receiving the proposal. So we got the wine there too. Shemini, oil, wine, double yod noon, all within the 8th day, Shemini, all right there. This is what we're going towards. This is going to be the fulfillment of it by the time we get to the wedding ceremony itself in Sukkot. But it had to be presented to have an invitation that we would enter into the 8th day. Bread, salt, wine, oil. Like all of these things are here. And the reason why I had suggested and I wanted to ask you about the barley bride and the wheat bride is because I don't see something religious here. I see something incredibly beautiful if we can really grasp a hold of it, because there are two main harvests in these earlier days. The barley was first, then the wheat. Wheat is connected with Shavuot. So the barley bride, who gets herself ready before then, barley is winnowed. It's not thresh, it's winnowed. Winnowed means you're using ruach. You're using ruka. You're using spirit to separate the chaff as it's being tossed in the air. It's not being beaten. This is the bride who heard spiritually to get ready, the first of the first fruits. Yeshua was speaking to his disciples, preparing them to be the barley bride, so they could go out to find the wheat bride. So everything was being presented right there as an initiation into this priesthood. Because something that's very interesting, when you take a look at the word Melchizedek in the Hebraic, the Hebrew aspect, there's the makaf. Is it called a makaf? A makaf? It's hyphenated. It's separate. There's Malki and then there's Zedek. They're two words. They're connected, but they're not connected. Like it's not together as one word. There's something that's separating it. You've got mem and you have kaf, makaf or makaf. So you've got chaos that is trying to grasp a hold of this concept of Zadik. So we have kings, Malik or Malki. So you've got the Malki, got the power that's there that is trying to connect to righteousness, but it's still separate. So it's a going to, but it didn't happen. It's like we have Melchizedek, but it didn't really, it's like we're trying to get into righteousness. We're trying to get, because Zedek, the Zadi, we're hunting, we're chasing, we're desiring, we're wanting to deliver ourselves through the circle of the time by revealing the light through the darkness as the sun begins rising above the horizon. There's something there prophetically that it just didn't quite connect. And he's like, you don't get it. I'm trying to get you into this priesthood because something new is happening. This is a mystery that you're not going to see, but I promise you there will be a day when the 8th day arrives. This will no longer be a mystery. The mystery of the many of who are one will no longer be a mystery. The many will become one. So, upper room. Here's this invitation to the Melchizedek. All of these covenants are being presented and being fulfilled simultaneously, all at once. And then we make something out of it that we're supposed to be breaking bread and fellowshipping and drinking wine, not realizing it that it was initiation into Melchizedek. Why did they go from house to house? Because they were breaking bread, drinking wine, which involved the salt as a friendship covenant, because they were initiating themselves into an entirely new worship system called Melchizedek. However, well, before we move into the however, there was one element in there, and this is what the Spirit shared with me last night too. The blessing. May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi.
Yeah.
What did he do?
He wiped the dust from his feet.
He washed
Washed it away.
from the rabbinical teachings they had been because of their walk. And he said, this is a mystery. Okay, now, what did he also say about if you want to be the greatest leader, you must first become a servant? Did he not say that? You must become a servant. All right, so we went from the house of bread and salt. Now we're moving into the Bayit Onoth, the house of reply or the house of response. Because this was an invitation that they had to respond to. And the root of response is a testimony and a witness. The tav has been added to being a noth because it is the testimony and the witness of the completion of the covenant. The very first time we actually see the word covenant is in the word Barashit. The word Brit is right there, in the middle of it is fire. That's the very first time we see covenant. So that tav in the house of reply or the house of response, temple Bayit, was that they were given the ability to respond. Remember, we were talking about responsibility is just the ability to respond. The ability to respond is the Bayit Anoth. You are responding to that covenant that is being presented to you. Do you want to enter into this? This means that everything that you know, you're having to be washed away. You are literally having to be washed of the dust of the rabbi that taught you before, because you're entering into a new thing, into a new day. Then when he washed his feet, he said, in order for them to lead, to be a greatest leader, one must first learn to serve. Now we just moved into the Bayit Shamesh. Shin Mem Shin. As you know, the servant candle of the menorah that lights the rest. The hand sign.
Oh, I do that all the time.
I know. This is that center candle, the central pillar of light that runs through us, that allows us to light up the lower chakras, the upper chakras, to illuminate the entire being so that we have the ability to be the fire of the sun that then brings light upon all that come within our path, because there's no shadow in our turning. The full teshuvah, Abba, Aleph, Bet, Aleph. We made full teshuvah. We are the light of the sun as being fully illuminated, no more shadow, because we know who we are. We are a fractal of Adonai. We are sovereign. We are Lord. We are master over these lesser elements called the flesh. We overcame. We are Israel. The straight, the upright, as El, the strong leader teaching shepherds that know the way of straight, that persevered, that overcame, that are masters, because they turned. I and Abba are one. Then the last house, and actually Ken helped me with this one because we were talking about it this morning, because I was seeing the progression. He said, well, you need to talk about the house of the eye then. I was like, but of course it would be the house of the eye. Of course it would be. The mark that is received in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, that everybody is freaking afraid of because it's the mark of the beast. Do you know the word is kayutha? And kayutha is the same exact word that talks about the beings that opened the scrolls in chapter 6 of Revelation. So if the creatures that open the scrolls in chapter 6 are the kayutha, then why was it changed to the beast in chapter 13 when it's the same exact word? Oh, the mark of the beast. We can't have that. We can't have that. Okay, well, the living creatures opened the scrolls and you didn't have a problem with that, and it was living creatures. Kayutha, we have the word kai, we have the word salvation. Utha, they have connected to the covenant that brought them back into one. Vav, Tav, Aleph, the living. Translated as beast. And it said they would be marked on their right hand. Why is the right hand so important? Yamin, because it's connected to what? Aman? The firm, the faithful, that trust and believe? They are marked on the right hand because these are those who went the right hand path in order to get the right hand and the left hand, behold,
Together.
both stabs, both masculine, feminine, now united together. And it says they would be marked on their forehead. The word forehead is bayit, and then it has eye afterwards. The house of the eye. Because they see, they are now single in their eye. You want to connect that to Peniel? That makes sense to me. Their antenna is so in tune with the spiritual gravity that they see first and foremost from that through their inward sight, instead of judging the external sight. They see with the inward eye, because they are the house of the eye, the temple of the eye that sees. And you will know them for their love for one another. Why? Because they made that complete circle, that complete journey from one into the separateness back into one, that everything that they see is part of that great absolute state of the one infinite creator that we call Adonai. So, Book of Hebrews talks about a change of priesthood. Do you know that that change of priesthood is not mentioned? It's not Melchizedek. There's a
Okay.
completely different word. And this is where I'm going to land the plane with it. I mean, this is a lot. This is what I'm sharing with you. This was all given to me for 2 hours last night. And I'm thinking, how am I going to deliver this and share this with you based on what I'm seeing for this Seder coming up of what we're moving into? The priesthood that is mentioned is called the Kumrata.
Like Qumran?
Yes. It's the Kumrata. And that is the priest is called the Kumra. The priesthood is Kumrata. It's not Melchizedek. Melchizedek was for a season in walking that out from the time of issue into the fullness of those who would actually walk into the brand new third day, Shmini Etzeret, fully having walked out, been married, now seated as the queen of heaven, back as Ashura, the happy and the fortunate ones that are displaying the Shekinah. It's the Kumrata. It has the Tav Aleph on the end. So Kumra is the word kum, to stand, to establish, to erect. Ra, those who would see, raised up, now seeing absolutely, but not Tav got placed in there. They completed the covenant. Now they are unified as one. This is the fulfillment of the sacred wedding, the wedding feast of the Lamb. Amara. The word Amar with an Aleph on the end. That's the word for lamb. They follow the word wherever it goes, and it leads them into that. So it's the Kumrata that's being established. That's the new priesthood. We haven't seen that yet. We've seen Melchizedek. That's why I wanted to share this with you. It is a brand new priesthood that isn't being talked about, that Qumran totally comprehended. They totally got it.
Well, they did.
The songs of deliverance, those who stand, they were known as the priesthood of light versus the priesthood of darkness. Those that were with the Septuagint, they had the scrolls, they had the language. They were Qumran. We are going to make a stand for that which is in the absolute state of being, the ringing cries of the songs of deliverance. That's who we are. And they got snuffed out because the priesthood that was being added every day in the book of Acts was the Qumran priesthood. It wasn't the Pharisees. The Pharisees, they had no idea. They did not want to give up their Greek Septuagint.
Right. That's
They
right.
still have the Orthodox Church today. They didn't want to give it up.
That's right. And rabbinical Judaism. Yeah, absolutely
Exactly.
true.
So the priesthood would have been the Sadducees. The Sadducees, it's not even the word, what is it? It's not even Sadducee. I will get back to you on that word because I just shared it the other day because I looked it up and I was like, oh my God, it's not. I'll have to send it to you. But they are the ones that were in Qumran. And they saw that Ishu was taking it one step further beyond that which they even saw. Because he was able to take it and take it to the people.
Essenes. You're talking about the Essenes.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that,
But,
I don't know if that was the word you were looking for, but
no,
okay.
I'll look at, I'm going to send it to you because now I'm like, how come that escaped my mind? Because it was one of those huge radical shifts when I saw it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this has all been hidden. There's a really good book that I did read a long time ago by Rachel Elior. Do you know who Rachel Elior is?
No.
Okay. I think you would get a tremendous amount from it. She is, it's collegiate writing. I read it when I knew very little of the Hebrew language and it was very difficult for me to assimilate, but she studied the Qumran, all the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and she wrote a book and it did not go well in her circles because of the things that she was exposing. I'm landing the plane on this. The most important feast day to that community above any other feast day was Shavuot.
Because
this is when they would come out and make a stand in declaration for the covenant. You would liken this to, let's connect it to something that we would talk about. The miracle that Yeshu did with turning water into wine, that was a betrothal ceremony. There's a lot that can be said about what that was, and I don't really want to unpack that here because that could cause too many ripples that I just don't want to deal with right now. But Shavuot is when they would come out as the betrothed, as a public declaration that they agreed and accepted the terms
That's right. At Mount Sinai.
at the wedding covenant,
Right.
and they do a mikvah.
Yeah.
That was their highest feast day.
Yeah. Great.
Like
I would believe that.
It is the highest feast day. So when we look at that, that's why when you had invited us to come and come and be with the community, and I said, oh my gosh, it's on Shavuot. That was not a light thing for me. That was a huge thing for me to see the potentiality of being in Israel on the feast of Shavuot. Are you kidding me? Standing and declaring the covenant. So I'm going to add one last thing. I said I was going to land the plane. It was a touch and go. That fourth cup of wine. How many cups of wine do you do at the Seder?
4.
Okay. The fourth one, didn't Ishu say he was going to reserve that?
Yes.
You're now in that day. That's what I wanted to land the plane on. Because Mashika, the anointing, the door has been opened to all of us here and now. If we begin looking as it instead of at it, we are it. We don't have to wait for the Mashika to come. We are it. Greater things you shall do. Why? Because there's many of us that are walking in it. What is this doing? This is bringing union. Mashika, Aleph, the mystery of the many who are one. That's no longer a mystery. We're one family. We're Adam. We drink the blood. We drink the juice of the grape as one family again. We are partaking of the fourth cup.
Well, okay. This is a game changer, and I mean that quite literally, because it's what I'm aware of. The other, even though it's valid and it, you have to drive the lesser car to get the better car, it's still the game changer. It's still a game. So it's like we've been in this game of finding our way out of Egypt, and the pharaohs within our concepts of everything, of ourselves, of the world, of Yeshua, of Adonai, of separation.
This is why I see that this whole thing is going to be bringing about healing, and why I started with the 2 houses, because Joshua and Caleb went into the promised land, right? Well, it was never meant to be a land to go into. It was meant to go up into, to go up, make Aliyah go up. Joshua, a representation of Ephraim. Caleb is a representation of Judah.
You bet.
2 that we see in the story that were always at the tent of meeting, that as soon as Moshe would go in, man, Joshua and Caleb were there. They wanted to be in that Shekinah glory. They were the ones that were always lingering. So in a representation, what are we looking at? We're looking at Yehuda. We're looking at Yod Hey, Vav, Dalet Hey. So we've got Yod Hey, Vav Hey with the Dalet, right? The praised. And then we have Ephraim. We have Afar. So it does mean a bandage, but it has a permutation for healing. So we're talking about the doubly ones that are of the praised, that are bringing healing and restoration in the fullness of its time, in delivering this message that it is now time to partake of the fourth cup, because the wedding feast of the Lamb is here. In the fullness of moving into the new priesthood, the Kumrata. And here, I'd actually shared this a while ago with some of our family, like when we go to Crestone and we have our meetings in Crestone every year, that it would be called the Kumrata Kunatha Asiya. That's a big mouthful. But Asiya, that's what the Pharisees or the Sadducees were. It's Asiya. It's Messiah is the word that we get for healer. It's Aramaic for healer, aka the Essenes. So this is a priesthood that is more about the restoration and healing all of the things that have caused us the division and the separation and our head wound of forgetting, hence why the bandages on the head, to bring about those because this is the doubly fruitful ones are the ones that receive the double portion of the inheritance. Hebrew and Aramaic are the double portion of the inheritance that brings about union once again. Now, if you can get that down to 45 minutes and share that at your Seder.
Oh, our Seders are about 4 to 6 hours.
Then you have plenty of time. So I just did the fast version. That's awesome. You got all the time in the world to unpack this one. That's awesome.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next time we talk, can we talk a little bit more? It's enough for today, but and I definitely want to respect your time too. Can we talk a little more about I just say Qumran priesthood. It's not Qumran because that was Kumrata priesthood. I would like to understand that a little better because we've just been teaching about the Melchizedek priesthood and the setting aside because of fulfillment of the Aaronic priesthood, which has been fulfilled for a long time. But and because we have a time of worship at the altar, the true altar, the real one, the real stone, the real authentic place of the altar of Melchizedek. So yeah, this is a big deal. This is a big deal.
I feel that. And it wasn't a light thing when it was being downloaded last night in this whirlwind that came in and why I couldn't sleep. I mean, I literally had to get up. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to remember any of this. So I sat out in the living room for 2 hours and just started writing it. It was coming. And I felt the shift. And I was hoping that it would be something that we would be able to unpack, because I think that this is, I'm going to use this phrase, this is biblical.
Epic and biblical.
And I use it loosely, but I use it in humor too, because it's, there are seasons and shifts that happen where nothing is the same ever again. We've called it in our house having suddenlies. And when suddenlies happen, everything moves. It's not, I mean, in my lifetime, I can say when 9/11 happened, that was such a suddenly moment. In that moment on, everything changed. Everything in that one moment, everything changed. Now you can go and look into what you might want to say, conspiracies and all that. I don't really care about that. What I do know is that when suddenlies happen, those who remain humble and pure in heart are going to have the easiest time through it, because they trust the lead of the Ruach, the Rucha, to bring comfort to them as they are making this transition, where there are others that may potentially go kicking and screaming. And so even moving in me sharing with you this change of priesthood, this Kumrata versus the Melchizedek, some of us have held on to that Melchizedek as like, oh yeah, and it's a very firm foundation for us. But yet I still see there's this new wave, because Ishu was establishing this 2,000 years ago. So we've had 2,000 years ago of the frequency of the Melchizedek going forward. Not saying that it may have came into its full fruition, but that vibration frequency was out there. And now yet there's one more new move that is coming in that is literally taking all of those paradigms and unifying them back into one. That's why Melchizedek was separated into two parts, Kumrata, the Aleph, is unifying it all back into its absolute state of perfected union. So yes, I feel it. We've just introduced it suddenly.
Well, and
I think it feels amazing. I'm just going to say it's amazing.
I think it's amazing. And I think I just feel such appreciation and gratitude for you sharing it with me, because you certainly didn't have to. So thank you. This is going to give me a lot to sit on and to look into and to see where I need to wash more of the dust off of my own feet first. And the more I wash off, the more room for the new. The more I die to what was, the more I can be reborn into what is.
I love
So
that.
I'm very much about that before I try to do a Passover Seder. I'm kind of laughing at the absurd thought of that right now, but I'm going to get there. I really am. And
Well, it's good thing that we have, what, 39, 38 days until, so, you know, another whole moon cycle goes by, so.
I'm going to need it. So, and just to be clear, as I'm washing the dust off of my feet, it's yeah, I think that just says it all. It's a letting, maybe I'm wrong on this, but it's a way that I kind of do things, because ceremony is important, we have Shabbat, and ceremonies are a big deal. Trading floor, I make a trade like David did for the floor of Arava, for the temple to be built. I make a trade for a new temple to be built within, or a refurnishing of the furnishing within the temple that is particularly up here. So, okay. Well, my love, thank you.
Thank you for letting me share that.
I want to hear what you have to say. Trust me on that.
Thank you. I love, my greatest joy is being able to see where dots connect, because like I said, this seems pretty epic and biblical, and I'm very humbled to be part of this process as family, walking it out together. It's in a lot of ways I feel like the story of the prodigal son, of having left and gone and experienced all of these things, and then coming to my senses to come back home to say, this is what I've been gathered, and maybe not looking at it as, oof. Coming back home to bring what I gathered, and yet at the same time humbly going, this is all I have to offer, and then having it received with such reception is it's very humbling.
That's Kumrata.
Yeah.
Those that possess inspirational sight.
I love that. Those who possess inspirational sight is what Ken said.
Well,
That's how you.
this time the brother that stayed in the house is running towards you as you're running towards me.
I feel it. That's why it's so beautiful. It's like the rewriting of the story.
We're rewriting the story, and it needs to be rewritten.
Amen.
The best thing coming ever. Okay,
I
you
love
guys.
you. I love you.
Mwah. I love you.
Until next time.
Thank you.